Hi, this is Eien. Today I'm here to talk about pickled vegetables. Today I have sauerkraut that I made a few weeks ago that includes cabbage, celery, and carrots. And it's a very simple method that I always have these pickled vegetables on hand, and I encourage you to try this out and taste the deliciousness that is fermented vegetables. So, the first thing I did this morning, I noticed that I had half a cabbage left in the fridge, and because it was not a full cabbage, I thought, okay, what else can I add? So I found some celery and carrots, took them out, and weighed them, and the weight of all three together was right around 750 grams. The reason I weigh vegetables is because I use a percentage for the salt. I like 2% of the entire weight of the vegetables. I weighed the vegetables. It was 750 grams. I chopped it up with my very sharp knife. You could also use a mandolin if that's easier for you to deal with, or you're more comfortable with that. The shape doesn't really matter. I had it pretty thin on this one, but you could make it chunkier if you'd like to. It's really personal preference. After that, I calculated 2% of 750 grams, which is 15 grams. So I weighed out my salt. I like to use Japanese sea salt that has a higher mineral content. Once I have the salt and the cut vegetables all ready to go, then I mixed it all together and let it sit for about 15 minutes. You don't have to do this, but if you just let it sit, it kind of does some of the work for you that we need to get the juices to come out of the vegetables. So I let it sit for a little bit, and then I mashed it around with my hands. It only took about 30 seconds of kind of picking up a bunch of vegetables and squeezing them, and then pick up another batch, squeeze them, and sort of do this in the bowl. And about 30 seconds later, or a minute later, a lot of the juices came out, and I was ready to put it into the jar for fermentation. Here I'm using a 1 liter mason jar. It turned out to be about the right amount. You don't have to use a mason jar. You could use any jar you have as long as it's clean, and just pack that. So it could be a bigger jar. Sometimes for a bigger batch, for example, if I had double the batch, then I would use one of those 2 liter mason jars. It's quite big. But in this case, it was the perfect amount. It ended up being just right for a 1 liter mason jar. And I have a few extra tools because I do this often. I do have some optional tools. If you're interested in making things a little bit easier for you, then one of them would be it's a wide mouth canning funnel. You can have a metal one like I do, or plastic ones are fine as well, just so it's easier to pack things into your jar. There's also a huge variety of sticks that you can mash in the vegetables into your jar. Many different brands and many different materials. I have one that is made out of bamboo, and there's 2 different ends. So one end is small enough that it fits through my funnel, and the other end is larger for more surface area to pack down more stuff. So that's another optional thing. You could also use a spoon, or even your hand. If it fits into the jar, you can use that as well. Another thing that is useful but optional and totally not necessary is some kind of a lid. So here I have this, I think it's called a pickle pipe is the brand. There are many different kinds of brands that allow carbon dioxide to escape as the fermentation is progressing. Something that allows CO2 out is nice, but you don't have to. You could also have a regular jar lid that you close almost all the way, but leave a little bit loose so that CO2 can escape. Some people take the lid and tighten it all the way, and then leave it on the counter where you'll see it every day, where you just let the pressure escape. The CO2 needs to escape every day if the lid is tight. So just be careful. If you forget about it and the lid is very tight and the CO2 builds up inside, there is a chance that it could explode. So we don't want that, obviously. One more tool that is nice thing to have is a weight. So I have these glass weights that allow me to hold down the vegetables and keep the liquid above the vegetables so that it ferments more completely, and usually has a better flavor when the fermentation is under the liquid, especially for longer fermentations. If you're only fermenting for a day or two, it's not a big deal, but if you're going to ferment for a week or longer, then you definitely want the vegetables submerged in the liquid. So once I'm done packing the vegetables, I will leave it out on the counter somewhere where I will remember it. It's always a good idea as well to label, put a date on your ferments just so you know when you started it, and you can decide by the date when it's a good time to taste test or to see when it's probably ready. I know from my experience that at room temperature, this kind of ferment, like a sauerkraut type ferment, is really great 5 to 7 days. For me, that's a great balance between a fermented flavor, slight tartness, still crunchy, still very fresh tasting. That's the kind of sauerkraut I enjoy, so I will stop it right around 5 to 7 days by putting it in the fridge. And I will change the lid from this kind of pickle pipe to a regular lid and then put it in the fridge. Once it gets cold, there's usually not too much danger of exploding in the fridge, but just in case, you want to check once in a while or keep the lid a little bit loose so that CO2 can escape. It will continue to ferment a little bit, but not nearly as much as room temperature. I highly recommend you try it out. It's delicious. I had a little sample of this just now and it tastes great. This is from 3 weeks ago. I made something similar and it will stay in the fridge for months, no problem. And it's great on sandwiches. Of course, you can cook it up, and it's good cooked, it's good raw. Of course, if you have it raw, you get those probiotic benefits, and it's delicious. So, and in fact, when I mixed it, before I even packed into the jar today, I tasted a little bit, and that's delicious. Even without fermentation, once you get the salt in there, get some of the juices out, it's a really delicious salad, just like as is. So you could try it like that. You could try it after 1 day of fermentation, 2 days, 3 days. It's totally up to you. And of course, fermentation will go faster if your room temperature is warmer. Good luck with that, and happy fermenting.